going here. So hello, Gina. Hello, Darien.
Hi, Julie. Nice to be here.
Nice seeing both of you. Welcome to Virtual Warwicks. In different times, we would be celebrating at the store and having maybe a glass of wine. Who knows? But like we were talking in the green room, you know, we do what we need to do as far as doing that pivot and learning different things. And so we've been doing these virtual events since March 30th of last year was our first one. So we jumped on like pretty much right away, and we've learned a lot. So we kind of have this down to a science now. So welcome. I'm going to give Facebook a minute or two just to notify everybody that we're here and that we're live. So I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about Warwicks and how to participate tonight. If you are joining us from, I think we were talking too, I think we have all the time zones covered. We have Darien coming to us from Hawaii. We have me on the West Coast and Gina on the East Coast. So we're just missing that middle. Maybe my daughter's watching from Chicago. Who knows?
We're missing most of America. Not for nothing. Just pointing that out. Hi, friends in Indiana. Yeah. Hello, Ohio. Hi,
South Dakota.
Alaska.
A long swath of country that we're... But we always think that we're the most important part on these coasts, right? It's just like, sorry, no, never mind. I digress. Anyway, so those of you that are joining us maybe from another part of the country, Warwicks is located in San Diego, La Jolla, California. We're going to be celebrating our 125th anniversary this year.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's so cool. It's so
really
amazing.
Cool. No, when you stop and think about it, we had a historical, and people who watch this all the time are going to get tired of hearing me saying this, but we had a historical novelist on, and she goes, think about what Warwicks has seen over those 125 years. 2 world wars, now 2 pandemics. So it started, 1896 is when it started. So it is a woman-owned business here in San Diego.
Great.
Yeah. So Nancy Warwick is the 4th generation owner. So we are an iconic store here in San Diego. Our legacy is we love to bring wonderful authors when it was the before times and they came in person, but now virtually we love bringing authors to the San Diego area. So thank you both for being here for that. For tonight, I will be putting Gina's book into the comment section. So you can easily click on that and order it, and we will ship that out to you. There it is. Yay, Fast Funny Women. But if you are in the area, we would love for you. There it is. We're going to do a screenshot with it. We would love for you to come by the store, pick up the book, maybe pick up some other things. There's lots of good stuff to look at Warwick. So, like I said, but I'll be putting that in there. You can easily click on it and order it that way. But you can choose pickup if you're in the area. There is a way for you to participate tonight. If you have a question or a comment, go ahead and put that into the Facebook comment section. And we're not going to bring those in live. Gina and Darien are going to talk for about 35 minutes. And then I will pop back in and bring any questions or comments into them at that point. So I think we've given Facebook enough time to notify everybody that we're here. So let's get the show going. So Gina, oh, you know what, Gina, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. Is it Barreca?
Barreca, you got it in one.
Yay! Thank you. Gina Barreca, professor at UConn, wrote Babes in Boyland. They used to call me Snow White, but I drifted. I love that. And co-authored I Was Stupid, One Man, One Woman, and 10,000 Years of Misunderstandings Between the Sexes Cleared Right Up. Sure. with Pulitzer Prize winner Jean Weingarten. She grew up in Brooklyn, New York, but now lives in Storrs, Connecticut. And I love that your bio ends with go figure. And Darien Sue, is it G or G?
G.
G. Darien Sue G is the author of 5 novels published by Penguin Random House that have been translated into 11 languages. She won the 2019 Poetry Society America's Chapbook Fellowship Award for Other Small Histories and the 2015 Hawaii Book Publishers, okay, here I go, Kapalapala Pa'okela Award of Excellence for Writing the Hawaiian Memoir. How was that?
It's excellent.
Okay. I spent a lot of time in Hawaii when I was little, so. She is the recipient of a Sustainable Arts Foundation grant and a Vermont Studio Fellowship. She holds a BA from Rice University and an MFA from the Rainier Writing Workshop at Pacific Lutheran University. She lives with her family on the big island of Hawaii. With that, ladies, have a great conversation. See you in about a half hour.
Thanks.
You. What a great introduction. And it's so, I am delighted to be at a bookstore that's 100 years old.
I know you could do a whole novel just from inside that bookstore. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's like I'm already like thinking, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure a lot of people have thought of that, but it's amazing to think of that kind of history, especially with everything that's happening with small booksellers these days. So I'm so excited for them.
And that they've sustained themselves, and thinking about, because women were, even though women were some of the earliest, as I'm sure most people listening know, the earliest writers of novels. We go back to Aphra Behn, we go back to, Orinoco, we go back to the really early versions of novels. But they were not often, treated as legitimate customers. And so this is a bookstore that was recognizing sort of a new audience. I mean, it really would be. I want to go live there now.
Among the stacks.
Exactly.
Around from behind the romances and be like, Gina, come over for tea. Yeah.
I think this would be a whole new gathering spot. We can sort of meet halfway, wouldn't it be? 6 hours for each of us. We could just meet there, Darien. It would be great. Now, I was saying to Julie, we know each other. I had the great good fortune to edit this new book that came out in March, Fast, Funny Women. And it's 75 essays of flash nonfiction. They're not traditional essays, all of them. There are, Darien is one of, again, the great writers who has been a writer of many things. There are also a lot of emerging writers here, and emerging writers go, as we know, from people who are 19 years old to people who are in their 80s. They just haven't found their audience yet, and they've landed on the pages of this book, alongside other women who have written things that you will recognize, Pulitzer Prize winner Jane Smiley, Marge Piercy, who we grew up reading. I can recite, I won't, but I could recite Strong Women. I could recite What's That Smell in the Kitchen. Marge Piercy has new books coming out. She had a new book come out this spring, new book, a volume of poetry. Mimi Pond, the cartoonist who did the astonishing cover of this laughing Medusa, right? I mean, and has a hilarious essay in it. Just writers that, even if you know them, you don't know them this way. So my next door neighbor growing up in Brooklyn, who I knew as Judy Blum, who the rest of the world knows as Judge Judy. So she's in the book, and so there are lots of different people telling lots of different stories. And for women to get their stories, our stories, into 750 words, to make them funny, to make them memorable, and to sort of communicate the honest experience, the hilarious experience of being a woman, in a way that women recognize when we're all in the same room, which is why we laugh at the same time, but we don't often see represented how we experience it. Darien, your essay is hilarious and honest, and it is on page, I believe it's 34. And it is called Lesson Plans 0103 on age dropping Botox and being an Asian American woman at 50.
Of course, now I'm 52, almost 53, but yeah.
53.
50, yeah.
It takes time for a book to come out.
50, yeah.
At the writing. And it starts with, I know you are, but what am I? And I mean, I just think it's like the subheading is really perfect. I know I am, but I know you are. Are you taking us right back to the playground, as so many of the essays do? But I want to talk about the playground that you and I met, which was at the Pacific Writers Conference, right? Wasn't that
it was in Honolulu, in Kauai. Yeah. And I think it was, did we figure it out? Was it 2012 or 2013?
I think it was 2012, actually. And it was, I was saying to Julie, we all do a lot of writer, people who are lucky enough get to go to writers conferences. And I was sort of the moderator at that session. And you were, along with the other 12 people, 13 people, maybe 15 people tops during the day, were there. And I just felt like, you were, I don't know, destiny's date for me. Like we sat and talked and laughed.
You know, but that's what I love about, I think when women meet, and it's not, of course, only women, but there is something about when women meet and they kind of recognize each other and they recognize like, oh, you're in my tribe. Like we are people. We are like each other's people. And I think we felt that way. And I remember, you know, because I've been in Hawaii for 20 plus years, and with everything I've been published, it's happened since I've lived out here. And so it's a bit, you know, I love it because we're far away from everything, but then it's also hard because we're far away from everything. And so it's really remarkable for me when I come across another writer and somebody as prolific and funny and articulate and clear as you, and you've just done so many things between not just the books and the teaching, but you have the columns. I mean, you just are so out there in the world with who you are and how you share your wisdom. And it was just really, and you were so confident with it. And it was just it left such an impression on me. It made such a big difference. And I remember I'd been grappling around that time about, I don't know if I should, you know, change some genres. I've been writing fiction for a while. I still write fiction, but I'd been nervous about switching genres. So they always tell you in the business, don't, you know, keep your platform, blah, 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 blah. And you were like, just do it. Just do it. Go for it. Just do it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do it. You know, and then I did, you know, it's like, you lit the little fire on the cannon. And then I went shooting out. And I think that really for me, like looking back on that and remembering that with you, I think that that's one thing that, especially for women, is if you can find like that person, or even for you, I consider you a mentor, you know, in that respect, because you really showed me how it's done. And that's, I think, the permission that we get when, like, that's in the collection, and that when women gather is that kind of permission to be like, oh, I could do it like that. And everyone's like, yeah, you could totally do it like that. And there we go. The races.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. And I think you're absolutely, but it is permission. It's like we're looking for permission notes. It's like, you know, we're standing, you know, with our hand up in the back of the room going, can I get a hall pass? Can I say something? I've had my hand up for 45 minutes. I was the kid with the hand up for 45 minutes where they're going, let's not see the same hands. And I'm like, but
that was me.
Right? It's like, I did the work. Why not see the same hands?
Right.
Damn it. It's like, if I did the reading and, you know, there's 16 other people sitting here, you know, didn't do the reading, I'm the one with the hand up. And this is, but that's part of what's going on in getting writers, and again, women writers and underrepresented writers, and writers who haven't found necessarily traditional or, you know, big trade houses that you and I have been. Most people would consider it fortunate to have been able to work with big trade houses in New York. But then to have, this is an independent press, Woodhall, that published this book. And I'm very proud to be with them, and they've been enormously responsive, and the book has sold out its first printing, which is enormously gratifying. And it's been a validation, which we're all looking for a lot of these writers, especially the ones who haven't had venues where they've been able to hold up a copy of a book and say, I did this, like, I'm here, you know, I'm actually in print. And we all know, and it's something I would love to hear from people who are watching or on Facebook, there is something different, don't you think, with all the great stuff of being online. And I actually love being on Facebook. I have, you know, and we've been part of some real conversations back and forth on Facebook. It's my preferred platform because I can actually take the time and read it. I'm not good with TikTok. I'm not good with Instagram. I'm really a word person as opposed to a visual person, despite my office looking like the inside of a piñata. But it's like, I really, you know, I like language, but it's having something in your hand, the book in your hand, or even listening to it, you know, that you can get it on Audible, is different from seeing something online and then it sort of disappearing. And I'm not talking about Kindle or something. I'm talking about, you know, just publishing exclusively online. And I know that's one of the things that my students or emerging writers, people that I deal with who ask for advice, I like having a book in my hands. How do you feel about the different ways that books are now done?
Well, you know, I am a digital person. I am a techie person, but I think I'm a reader first. And so I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I've got like, I think 9 bookshelves in my house. And it's hard because we're in Hawaii. We're not in a place that's super damp, but I'm really, kind of precious about my books, because sitting down with a book or lying in bed with a book or, sitting on the beach with a book, that's just how I kind of grew up. I grew up in libraries. So I'm very, very physical. I like having it in my hand. And so, and I also, for me, there's something with the visual. I really like seeing the way words appear on a page, like the physical page. But I have a Kindle, I, have a lot of e-readers. I'll do that. I do a lot of stuff on the computer, obviously. So I get it and I use it, and I do like the convenience when I'm traveling, but I almost always still carry at least 1 or 2 books. I mean, that's always what makes my bag heavy, right? Or books. And so I think I can't let it go. And I hope we don't lose it, because I really do feel like, and I do think that it's a completely different relationship in our minds when we're looking at something and reading something physical versus like seeing it on the screen.
I do too. And I actually, one of the parts of teaching that obviously has changed in the last year and a half for me is I would make my students handwrite. I mean, they're grown, 18 to 22-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 38-year-olds, 90-year-olds. I mean, we got auditors coming back, everybody sort of leaves school. Who was the kid with their hand up? Once they leave school in September, they want to come back if only to buy supplies, right? Everybody wants a new notebook. But to write, I think that, again, and there are all of these studies that are coming out now, that the brain really does process differently when you handwrite. And so clearly, again, everything we submit now, we submit electronically, but I start by writing by hand. Do you write by hand, or you write straight on?
Always writing by hand. I mean, it's not just journaling, but I mean, I do my novels. I will say, I mean, when I do my novels, and it depends on sort of where I am, I do a lot of my work on the computer, and on my laptop, but I 100% believe in the power of the mind-hand connection and writing on the page. And in terms of also getting out of your own way, I think that's one of the biggest challenges for writers, not just new writers, like all writers, right? Is we tend to get in our own way. We've got all that self-doubt and all that angst and all that craziness. And writing by hand just is like, it's a way that it's like you short circuit that, right? But when you're on the computer, it's different. So I think it's a huge thing. So I think any kind of creative work, if you can start or do something on the page, the physical page, I think it makes a huge difference. But, of course, it's not that you can't do things online, it's just, or on the computer, it's just different process. And I do think you're right. Those studies with the whole mind body connection thing, it's a real thing. So I always tell people, I tell my students, the clients I work with, to always have a notebook with you, or, people have index cards or whatnot, everything. But the neat thing about those things is, again, they're tactile, right? You can spread them out, you can put them on the wall, and you can see them versus, swiping or flipping or doing whatever you have to do on your phone. So
no, it's entire. I mean, I'm looking around my, just because I can I'll do a visual just as you did. No, but imagine,
yes.
I don't know. Again, I'm 64 years old. So I've got these from when I was, 12 probably. And it's like random notes. They're just random notes. I got a little pink one because I'm a girl. I don't care. I mean, it's like I get them at TJ Maxx. And when I give a lot of students or friends, nice notebooks. Not usually like the leather bound, it was from TJ Maxx or something, but I will make them. I'll wrap it, although I wrap things like the Unabomber. I'm not a good wrapper. There are people who are very precise. I have my friend Heidi, very precise. She wraps things for me for Christmas because I'm embarrassed and I'm afraid to send them in the mail that I'll be arrested. But I will give the person, that I'm gifting this to, a nice notebook. But when they open it, I will then make them write something in it. Because that's
a great idea. I love that. I'm going to steal that. I love that.
Good, please, because it's the fear of like, I'm going to deface this beautiful object. And it's like, no, this is here. And even if you're going to be like, Jack Torrance in Stephen King's, come on, The Shining, where he's writing 700 pages of all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Whatever you're going to write, just start it so that something's on the page, just something is there. And I mean, even at the Pacific Writers Workshop or any workshops that I've done, I make people write. I don't know if you remember that, but it's like, you've got 10 minutes you're answering this question, then everybody's saying either you read what you wrote or you're summing it up, but you're going to talk. You're
Yeah.
going to contribute. This is a community. If you wanted to sit by yourself, you could do that. That's not why you're here. Sorry.
Well, no, I was saying that just made me think of something else. So, I think in addition to writing, another thing that I also love to tell writers, new writers especially, is to read your own work out loud. And I think that like when you start to hear your own voice, both literally and figuratively, right, you kind of go, wow, that's pretty cool. And if you're a big reader, because, a lot of writers were readers first, you kind of get a sense for, that was my education, I got my MFA at 50. So I wasn't an English major as an undergrad or anything like that. And so if you're kind of late in life coming into writing, chances are you were probably a pretty voracious reader. So when you start to read your own work out loud, even like the small little things, like I do a lot of micro narratives and micro essays these days, and I always have people read it out because it's short. And when you hear it, you just kind of go, your brain starts to like shuffle things around. It's like you're almost revising out loud. You can hear it and it gives you so much information, but it's powerful. Again, same thing, same tools, right? Basic tools.
But it's also, again, it's so obvious, but I think we all need reminding. It is actually finding your voice. When you read the stuff out loud, it's material. Text and textile come from the same word. It's it's the feeling. Again, it's the something between the hand, but it's the same with voice. It's when you're reading the work out loud and you find your signature. You hear the patterns, you understand. It's like listening to somebody speak, and you can hear them. It's like Dario Fo in, doing the Commedia dell'arte, and what somebody's saying, even if they're not saying words. It doesn't matter. They're communicating because of the cadence and the rhythm and the emphasis and the line break. And the same thing happens with language. So I do the same thing. And there are students who are like, no, it lives on the page. I don't want to. It's like, get over it. Speak.
Yeah.
That's I'm not sure how I feel about that one. That's odd, only because I do think these things all work together. And if you really think about it, right? It's like music in a way that you can actually create something literally from nothing, right? Like these words on the page, like every essay that's in this book started with an idea from these writers or a question, right? Because usually the what if is like, I wonder if, or, if I'd done it this way or hadn't done it that way, or I remember, right? That's always a really popular prompt people have, but that's how you jump back into these stories. And usually I think we both had this experience too, where a prompt isn't necessarily about that prompt. It leads you to the next thing, right? You're like following breadcrumbs, and you can't do it unless you show up, which means, the practice of writing. But when you do hear your own voice and you do read your own work out loud, I do think you kind of own it in a way that when you just see it on the page, it's safe. Like it's over there, there's words and they're safe. And then when you read it, you really, I think you become like more simpatico with it in a different sort of way, where you're like, okay, these things all go together, and I'm part of this, and that is part of me. And, not to get like too esoteric about it, but it's a really cool creative process. Right. And actually, when I, recommend people do that, it's also for revision. For a lot of writing, revision is a really big part of it. And that's actually when you figure out what you have. Right.
Right.
So that's,
right. What's useful. And actually one of the other contributors to the book is Faye Welton, who is it's so wonderful. And Faye, has been, I think she's written 38 novels, and she introduced basically America to the BBC because she wrote the opening episodes to Upstairs, Downstairs. And so, she wrote the opening episodes. And so she gave me away at my wedding. She flew over. She's my fairy godmother, and she has given me permission. And actually the first book, Snow White, the first trade book I ever did, I did academic books. But she said, we saw a pair of red shoes in Bendel. She was over for a book tour, and I was still in graduate school. And she said, you would look very nice in those. And I said, Faye, they're like $150. This was like in 1986. I said, they're $150. I'm not going to be able to ever spend $150 on a pair of shoes. She said, well, Gina, you must write books. I said, yeah, but I'm an academic. I could write books that no one's ever could have. I said, no. Then you must do it differently. You must write books that people will buy. And I always remember, and I dedicated a book to Faye. I did, It's Not That I'm Bitter, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About Visible Panty Lines and Conquer the World, is dedicated to Faye. And because she's like, you must write books that people will buy. She didn't say that people will read, I really feel like this is a working writer, you know? She said, yes, you must write books that people will buy. I thought, okay, that's really good. But Faye was, she was the one who, again, going back, to the idea of permission, all the rest of it, but she always said that you needed to be able to tell your story, to get it out there, to, in the process of revision. And I entirely forgot why I started the Faye story. And it was really important. And
it was so good that
it was so good. And I'm trying to loop around and find what the heck I was thinking. And this is, again, one of the reasons why students take notes. It's like, Professor Barreca, the original point you were trying to make, but about the process of revision, and damn if I can remember what it was. But Faye is in here, and she gave me really good writing advice, and I don't know what it is, but it's also good to remember that, you must write books that people will buy. But she also said that in terms of like sitting down and writing, she said, every page, if you get, and again, this was in the early days of publishing, she said, just think, every 2 pages you write would be a pair of red shoes. And I was like,
math.
That'll get me in that chair. And I was writing an academic, like the book that got me tenure, and they used to call me Snow White, but I drifted at the same time, because I'm thinking, one will get me a job like for life, and one will get me like shoes, and because as an academic.
That's the next book that you're going to write.
Was a pair of red shoes.
It's your memoir, a pair of red shoes, right?
A pair of red shoes, that this would be it. But anyway, we all were finding permission from somebody, and they come in at different points in your life. And it is crucial to find somebody who, again, sort of taps you on the shoulder and says, again, go and do it. So you said you grew up reading. You grew up.
I did. Yeah.
What were your favorite books as a kid?
Well, all the Judy Blume, all the Beverly Cleary, all the
Beverly Cleary.
I was a, quote unquote commercial reader when I was pretty young. I write commercial fiction. I do literary fiction too, but it's commercial fiction. I like things that are super accessible. I like entertainment, especially in this day and age. I like to be whisked away. I like comedy. I like smart, sort of snarky characters. I like those protagonists, and they tend to be women. I write women's fiction, but I like women's fiction for that same reason. But when I was younger, it was always these kids that were a little bit the other or outside a little bit in some way, right? Like Ramona was always too much, which is a story I grew up hearing all the time, that I was too much. I asked too many questions. I had too much energy. It's like, I think there's probably a lot of women who can relate to that. Like, you're too much. And then you also get that same message at the same time that, it's not okay to be more as a woman, right? Whereas if you're a young man or a boy, it's always like, what else, be all you can be and all this kind of stuff. But for women, it's like, you're too much, and that's a bad thing, right?
And that's when, again, growing up, exactly the same sort of hearing that the refrain, that too much, and I think young women still hear it. And the only thing that I say is, it's not that you're too much; it's that the world isn't enough.
Yeah, I love
that. Isn't that? I mean, that is what I have learned. That is like, I think that should be on bumper stickers. But it really is the case, is that's like, again, trying to fit yourself into a size 8 or a size 2 or a sub-zero, which is a refrigerator and not the size of clothing, right? But that, that it's to be as tiny as possible. And women try to fit ourselves into clothing as opposed to buying clothing that fits us.
I know.
Right? And now you talk in your essay, which again is one of my favorites, of course. But when you're talking about body image, and you're talking about what faces look like as they age or not age, what accessorizing means, and God knows accessorizing is important. But I love at the beginning, I'm going to read to you so that you can hear your voice, and then maybe you'll read the next line. But
I'm so glad this is being recorded because I'm going to play this over and over again.
so right, no one has ever said, "Oh, Gina," with her dulcet tones. Yeah, I have a voice. I have a voice like traffic. I still sound like I'm from Ocean Avenue in Brooklyn. I lived in England for 5 years. I did not come back saying, "Oh yes, the marmalade cat in the flat," with the flat with the lift. No. I still talk like this. So you say in the third part of your essay, lessons planned 01 to 03. I like being 50. Everything they say about this side of the river is true. There is more self-acceptance with or without Botox. It's easier to say no to things I don't want to do. That's such a great line. It's easier to say no to things I don't want to do. I have gratitude and appreciation for small moments and kind gestures, but I am no longer part of the zeitgeist. It's a really interesting idea. Could you maybe read the next line?
Oh,
Do you
I
have
get
it
a
there?
lot of things. Yeah, I get a lot of things wrong, even as a well-traveled / well-educated / born in the United States / child of immigrants / female person of color. I am a prospector looking for treasure in a boggy swamp of genetic, familial, environmental, and cultural influences. Compliments become suspect, as do my responses.
It's just wonderful. And again, you get so much. And one of the things about asking everybody to stay within 750 words, and I mean, I had some of these, again, great writers send me stuff that was 700 and 775 and it was like, or 700 and 750 words. I was like, you can't. You have to cut this to 750. And you're like, but I can't. I need an extra 35. It's like, no, I
I
can't.
know.
Everybody's doing this. So in that way, I feel like I was asking people to be in a size 8, but it's this way. And then some people came in shorter.
I look at it really differently because I do really love flash and short forms. The way I look at it is, and I know some people do feel those constraints, like it feels like a constraint, like trying to fit into a smaller size, but I look at it more as like, let's make some, like, what are the hard decisions here in terms of what is really essential? Like what is the most important thing here, right? And that's why, and actually, if you really, really do that, you will actually come in under your word count because you'll be like, oh, I don't need this, I don't need that. But, I will say, when I turned 50, and I don't know if I knew then what I know now, right? I did feel like something like a switch kind of got flipped, but that was all in my head. And I wish I'd kind of flipped that switch when I was like 40 or even 30. And I couldn't do it, right? Because I was too wrapped up in what I thought was going on. But I just, at 50, I was kind of like, well, it's over. I mean, I'm just gonna lay down at this point, let the truck roll over me. I'm like, all right. And so it just was easier to be like, well, yeah, sure, whatever. Oh, you don't like that? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, well, moving on, right? Instead of like getting all worked up. And so I really do feel, I mean, I'm so grateful to be where I am now. I mean, the body things in terms of things starting to break down isn't so great, but quite honestly, things are really nice. I think, the view from the side of the river is pretty good. So
Right.
I'm really grateful.
Yeah, no, we were talking when we were talking this weekend, and I'm still carrying guilt. The thing I got to learn how to put down is the guilt, because I know you're not giving me the guilt, but I was late to our meeting because I got the time wrong.
We changed the time.
No, but I'm still carrying the guilt. And this is again another. I think this is another woman thing.
It is a woman.
Like, I got the time wrong because we changed the time. And I'm like, how am I'm getting out the flagellating myself with the thing with the thorns on the edge. I'm like, and I would say, and I know you're saying, what's the big deal? I'm living with this. I'm thinking, so anyway, we're going to let it go. But but we were talking about how when you get, I mean, if we feel like you're talking about Ramona or feeling like too much, marginalized for whatever reasons that we bring to the people that we see as the ones who are, straight out of central casting, which we haven't been, especially for like, the movies with strong male central characters that don't pass the Bechdel test. And, but now when you're starting to look at the edge is the most interesting place to be because it gives you the best view.
I love that.
Right, the widest vision, and that's really important. I'm just going because then we're going to take questions. We'll have Julie come back in, but the idea of how that works with humor, because humor is always on the edge. That's why the poor are funnier than the rich. that's, I think, why women are funnier than men. I think that's why people who are in some way marginalized are the ones who are really funny, because it's the view from the center. There's no perspective. And
Yeah.
humor is about perspective. Humor is about being able to step to the side and like do a little somersault with reality and say, wait a minute, wait. Look at what just happened. That's the funny part. And that's when we get together. And that's what the 75 essays in Fast Funny Women really do. They're women who are looking at life, and mostly they're not huge revelations that nobody's ever thought of before. But what they do, I say in the introduction, it's like, all good writing holds a mirror up to life. And that these little short essays will hold a compact mirror.
I love that. So
right?
funny.
But but the idea is that they make you stop and look at something you didn't see the humor in the first time.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that that's a lot of what storytelling does, what poetry does, what all narrative does, what music does, what all art does, is it makes you stop and go, I didn't see it that way before. I didn't hear it that way before. I mean, it's not that like we've never heard the notes, but we've never heard them in that order. It's not like we never heard the words, but we never heard them in that order, the colors, and that's what it startles us. And, humor startles us into laughter. And like I said, we all know, as you said before, that's what, we need right now more than anything else. But I was so happy that you were one of the people who I asked first. You were in my wish list of contributors, and I'm so proud that you're in this book, and I'm so glad you're here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Gina. It's just been an honor. And again, I just love working with you, and I love how you're always paving the way for the rest of us. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, there's so many fun things that we could talk about.
I know,
But I love exactly. I was just like, I was sitting in the back going, oh yeah, that's it. But to your point, Darien, too, it's like the perspective that we have as we age. It's like, oh, if we could only put ourselves in our younger, just take, it's like that things we angst about at 19 and 29, and it's.
But I wouldn't do any of it over for $1 million.
Not for a minute.
I really wouldn't.
No.
I mean, that's not, and again, and I don't know whether that's because I work with young people all the time. And so I know, and I have 2 stepsons who are at that adorable age where they're both attorneys, and they're done. But I work with all these young people. I've never had kids myself, but I have everybody else's kids. And it's so hard. And I think we forget, we glamorize again the sense of youth. And what we remember is when everything worked and everything, was positioned, and we could stay up 3 days in a row and not feel it and the rest of that. But I just remember being emotionally exhausted.
Oh yeah.
As a young woman.
I never want to go back to that dating, see the bar. Oh, no, thanks.
Hard pass. Yeah.
Hard pass.
I believe that was what the bar I went to was called, was hard pass. And that's what they used to do. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But it is though. But I mean, you just wish that some of these young people had the confidence that we gain from age.
Is it confidence, or is it what Darien said, which is just like, I'm done, I don't care? I don't know.
I'm also cracking
confidence to do that though. I think you have to have the self-belief that you just like go, I don't care anymore.
I do think that comes with age, but I was just laughing a second ago, Julie, because you kind of said these young people, which is what I said the other day, and my kids were like, "Oh my god," like, you young people, and they're like, "Oh my god," and I'm like, "Oh god, that came out of my mouth. It did." You young people don't understand.
You don't.
So I know it's kind of like, yeah, but I will say, I would probably go back and do things differently, not from a regret place, but just because I'm curious, but I'm equally as curious about what's coming next. I mean, I will say last year I wasn't as curious to see what was happening with this pandemic, but it is curiosity, I think, fuels a lot of this journey.
Well, and I think too, though, last year was that reset that I think was kind of good in some ways. I mean, I don't like that silver lining thing, I mean, it's like, but that pause, I think we're all
Yeah.
going to look back at that pause and kind of go, some of us
Yeah,
I
because
learned some things.
yeah, I think for
I've
some
learned that I'm
people,
really lazy.
no. Although that is an interesting thing. There are people who like they're like, that's another kind of like, can I get away with this? Can I get away? Like, can I get away with never wearing anything below the waist, except sweatpants or leggings or whatever, a hula skirt. I mean, whatever it is that you like, this is all that, I haven't, my husband hasn't put on it. Well, he hasn't put on a tie in 8 years, but he hasn't even put on like a sports jacket, in the last year. It's so there were some things, but then there are other people's lives, as we all know, and not to,
Right.
virtue preach, whose lives have been
decimated,
not just reset, but just torn apart.
Yeah.
And that happens that happens every year, and
Right.
there's some things are unpreventable, obviously, but I think that one of the good things to come out of this was a re-reckoning, like there was this sense of, wait a minute, like we have to have some conversations that we have avoided for a long time. It's like that point in a family where somebody says, okay, we're going to do an intervention. Things have gotten too bad.
Yeah, you can look at COVID as an unexpected sort of intervention in that way.
Correct.
That's an interesting perspective, actually. I think that's really interesting. But I do think we got to see ourselves for better and for worse. And I think that, like Julie said, that has a place, and it was purposeful in a lot of ways. And so where we go from here is going to be really, really interesting. I mean, I just think a lot of things have just changed like permanently. Like we've not just like kind of adjusted and been flexible. We actually have done, sorry, Julie, the pivot, right? Where we're like, we are.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
It's
And
interesting.
I think there are some things that you're not going to go back to.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think some of those are?
Wear pants. No, I'm just kidding.
We're being lazy. I like staying home. Sorry.
But I actually literally dream. And for people who like know me, I mean, I'm a hugger, and I miss, and I'm, I have friends in a pod. And so I haven't had the kind of disconnection that I know others have experienced, but I miss like just, being online at the supermarket as I was today, where you see somebody that and you give them a hug. I mean, like that's the old Italian woman part of me that I have looked forward to, which is that you could do that and nobody thinks you're coming on to them. It's like really, it's like, and so I mean, that's the part that I'm looking forward to. Although I did have a friend who I've known for a long time said that, or posted on Facebook, that she felt she never liked to be touched, and that this has been the first year where she's
really happy.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got some questions coming in. So Laura, Darien spoke about switching from fiction to nonfiction. So will Gina ever write fiction?
Oh, I have tried. Now, Darren, I remember one of the things you said, because it's not something that I don't take lightly, these kinds of offers. You said, I write a great book proposal, that you knew how to write a great book proposal. And I was like, I can't. I have tried to write fiction. I don't think it's my talent. I feel like in the same way that I'm sort of a bad dancer. I sort of dance like Elaine in Seinfeld. It's like a lot of
love that.
Sort of, yeah. I'm like, and people's like, yeah, and like follow these footsteps is no. It's like why I'm a really good cook, but I can't bake because you actually have to follow like instructions. I'm just like, that's not my talent. I can do one thing, I can't do another. And I'm not particularly flexible, like the dancing. I'm not so flexible, and I would love to write fiction. It seems to me that fiction is still the most amazing calling and friendship bred. Darien's novel swept me off my feet and into this world of women and into this sense of community. And I would love to write something like that. And the times I have attempted to do that, I have failed so entirely. And I have, and that's where, again, I actually feel legitimately, I don't think it's just an enabling fiction kind of thing. I feel like when students say, I started this novel and I really don't like it. And it's like, Is that when you're writing or when you're reading? And it's like, because you can stop doing both. You can really, if it's really no good, you can stop. It's like you don't, all my students now want to write like 7-volume
Oh.
fantasy novels. And it's like, if it's entertaining you, if you love doing it, that's fabulous. But if you feel like you're stuck in the blueprints for volume 5 of The Living Shrub or whatever, you don't have to. Just because you wanted to at one point in your life doesn't mean you have to. So I would love to do that, but I don't think that I can. And but it's always nice to be asked, because it's being asked is like, the cutest person in the room asking if you would like to dance, and then going, no, I dance like Elaine. I can't. I'm just going to skip this.
Right, like you have to be like, yeah. But like you said, it's a, that somebody thinks that you have that possibility. So, so Amanda has a question for you, Gina. Did you ever catch any guff in the academic sphere for your use of humor in your writing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my short answer to that question. Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah. Next. Yes. There was a reluctance. I was told when I was in graduate school by the group of people looking at my dissertation proposal, which then became both the academic book, and they used to call me Stoic, but I drifted the first book that was a bestseller. And the men on my dissertation committee, and I chose them. I had originally started to work with a woman, and that was, again, it was not a good fit. So the guy who ended up being my advisor was very nice, but he first said, don't you think that if there was humor in women's literature, somebody else would have written about it already? I was like, okay, that might not be the most encouraging thing to say to somebody starting out in the field. And then actually I found one other woman, a brilliant woman named Nancy Walker. And she had started to write about humor in American women's writing from colonial times up into the 50s, the sort of domestic humorists like Irma Bombeck and Jean Kerr. And she was at the University of Alaska. And she was, again, one of the people who gave me permission, because she was a tenured professor, and she ended up at Vanderbilt, which was great. And but she had found her way to various academic positions. And I wrote to her and said, like, I'm a graduate student, Professor Walker, and I think I'm doing this for my dissertation, but I'm not. And you're the only person. And she said, oh, I'm so glad to think that somebody else out there believes this is, a legitimate trajectory, and let me help you, as opposed to saying, this is my turf, get off, I'm the one doing this. And the generosity and the graciousness and the welcome was like that. I answer every letter I get from anybody, because people answered, Faye Welton answered my letter, people like that. But yeah, the academics took a little getting used to. Darien, what? Let me sort of pivot the question. And did you, when you wanted to start, because you said earlier, the received wisdom in publishing is always that you stay within your genre.
Yeah.
So I like to think that I was there, cheering you on and giving you chutzpah. But what did that feel like to you? Like, was this from like a marketing standpoint, a creative standpoint? Like, where was that voice coming from?
It was for me a creative call, and it was because it was very unpopular, right, to try to do something different. But I think that's when you get used to sort of understanding and listening to those, like the voices, not those voices, but the voices that are like, I have a story to tell here, and I may not ever write this again, but I'm going to try it this way. And I just ended up with this mentor who was an amazing poet, and I kind of went down the path that way. And then I ended up having this poetry collection, and then I ended up, in essays and doing nonfiction. a lot because of you saying, yeah, you could totally do that. And also I think you do get to a point, I think both as a woman and as a writer, you just kind of go, you know what, I only have so much time. And I think it's important that I write what I want to write. And I know that I might be jeopardizing my base or whatever in doing this, but I'm just going to keep following this and seeing where it goes. And I think when you're listening to yourself, and then maybe if you're able to kind of fold in the marketplace a little bit, somewhere between the two, you'll get some answers. But, you know, I consider myself just a writer who writes novels and some poetry and some essays. So I feel like really the gift is just the writing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And you have to write from your heart, and you have to, you know, and it's, if you're writing from your heart, whatever your genre, whatever it is, you know,
When you pay attention, I think you get those hints. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll find the audience, like you said. But I love your friend that said, buy books that people, or write books that people will buy. It's like, oh, I was just like, you little easier said than done, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
Just do a bestseller. Just do a bestseller. Just do a list.
Write a bestseller. Come on.
Times bestseller list. Come on. Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorite. It's from Margaret Atwood, and I think it's Lady Oracle, where it was a book very much about writing and being a woman writer, and the character has somebody come up and say, well, why don't you, you know, or somebody at a cocktail party, and somebody says, like, why don't you just write a bestseller? It's like, that's what I would do, you know, like, why don't you do that?
Yeah.
And
Do that.
you know, and really, people don't understand that. And then somebody else comes up to her at the same cocktail party and says something like, what's it like to be a failed writer? And she turns to him and says, why don't you publish yourself and find out? And that's the kind of answer. It's like, I love you, Margaret Atwood.
Yes, exactly. Fan mail.
Yeah, I'm writing this with a Sharpie on my arm so that the next time somebody says that to me, I'm getting, and again, with the advice that I give to the students in my classes, it's, you know, in UConn, you know, a lot of first generation college students, kids who are coming out with college loans. It's like, yes, follow your passion, write what you want, get a day job, get dental, you know, it's like, yes, that's great. So before you get, you know, it's like Faye was, and we were talking about the red shoes in the window. It was not just like, you know, we'll write poems, you know, so that you will pay my student loans. It's like, it has to be, because if you're going to write, and I really believe this, and I'm not unique in believing this, but that if you're going to write, you're going to write. You're going to work as a cashier. You're going to work as whatever miserable job that you have, and you're going to write.
Yep.
And if you think that you need to have candles and lavender and all of which are nice, I love my room, I love my office, I have a nice computer. But I used to write in a Lower East Side apartment on a card table that wobbled, you know, with like a naked light bulb.
Right, yeah.
You know? And so you're gonna write.
You're gonna find a place to do it.
No matter what.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so I've got lots of comments. There's, you know what, Gina, go in and look at the comments. There's some great comments on Facebook. So after we're done, Susan Watts is listening in her car, and she loves the encouraging words. But there's one here from Susan Cossette, who says, Gina, my grad advisor from 1989, our first years at UConn. I was in your office registering for my first MA classes when you marched down the hall with the FedEx for your sewn white book in me.
That's so nice. And this is a poet. Susan is a poet, and she is prolific, and we have great conversations and on Facebook, and it's a treasure to remember. Yeah, I used to wear a mini skirt and 4-inch red high heels because I started buying the red shoes, and I wore them to class. And that was part of like, did your Uber ever get you into trouble? I was like, yeah, so did my mini skirt and high heels, because the, you know, students were coming in going, is that what a feminist looks like? And I'm going, yeah. Actually,
I remember 1980, well, it was like 1984, I think I had, or 85, my first job, and I bought a bright red suit and bright red high heels and marched into I was in the electronics industry. So I was like the only female in the room. So it's like, here I come, guys.
It's sort of the idea. I mean, for all of us, it's like it's not that you're not enough. It's the world isn't too much. It's like, can a feminist do this? It's like, there's, of course, this
Yeah.
is, I am one, I'm doing it, ergo. It's like
Exactly.
a syllogism,
And it was just like, and my thing was just like, take it or leave it, here we are. Well, ladies, we are out of time. This was such a great conversation. It was so fun hosting both of you.
Well, you'll have us back together and individually, right?
Absolutely. So Gina, for people who are watching that may not be familiar, do you have a website or something that people can go to?
Yes, it's the really creatively titled GinaBarreca.com. That's, it's really, and any version of R's and C's will work really, because it's just, but it's 2 R's and 1 C, BARRECA, Gina.
Perfect. And they can
And
find
also-
everything and like communicate with you that way.
Find her on Facebook because she has the best threads and the best posts, and she's always asking questions, and they are just the best questions. So please find her on Facebook and follow her, because
And how do we find you?
How do we find you, Darien?
same like Gina, I'm at darieng.com. I try not to be on social any more than I have to, but I am on all the platforms too. So
Perfect.
Good
All right,
enough.
ladies. Well, I'm going to take us off of Facebook and stop the recording. So thank you everybody at Facebook for watching. And there is the link to buy the book. There it is.
Here we go.
Fast Funny
Thank
Women.
you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. So
Night.
Thank-